Hi friends, and happy Ganesha Chaturthi. I thought in honor of Ganesha, I would read a chapter in which Ganesha has an important conversation with the Torchbearers. So I'm reading just a little section from my debut novel, The Torchbearers. Interesting fact, I had originally written a lot of the story from the perspective of Ganesha. It was not exactly in torchbearer form, but kind of. So it's always been fun for me to imagine Ganesha, and he was one of my favorite characters to write. So the Ganesha and the torchbearers are sitting on the Bushbuck, this airplane, and flying over parts of India. And Ganesha starts the conversation. "Let's pass the time by getting to know one another better," Ganesha said. "We've only just met, if you think about it. Let's talk about getting ahead." "Getting ahead of what?" asked Brahm, puzzled. "And who's getting ahead?" asked Samhita. "Us or you?" "One question at a time," Ganesha said. He pointed at Brahm first. "Getting ahead, not ahead, is what I mean." While the torchbearers were trying to figure this out, Ganesha pointed at Samhita. "Well, as for me, I had a head, but it was only later that I got a head. Of course, I mean, you do know that I wasn't born with an elephant head, don't you? How insensitive of you to forget." Ganesha huffed through his trunk. It sounded like a foghorn. Samhita looked aghast. "Of course I know that. I didn't mean, I'm so sorry." "I'm just teasing you," said Ganesha, winking at her, "and I'm not offended. In fact, I'm used to being the elephant in the room." Brahm and Kushal laughed, and after a moment, Samhita joined in as well. Ganesha cleared his throat and began. "It happened when my mom gave me a chore. I was supposed to stand guard outside our home while she was inside. So I stood, and when someone approached, I stopped him. That someone was my father, but I didn't know it at the time. I told you earlier, he wasn't a very hands-on dad. He demanded to enter, and I firmly refused. Finally, in what I believe was a terrible overreaction, he lopped off my head." Ganesha paused, dramatically clutching his neck. The children, even though they knew the story, gasped collectively. It was another matter entirely to hear the story straight from the horse's, or rather the elephant's, mouth. "My mother ran out, and my parents had what must have been a legendary argument. Naturally, I was beside myself at the time." Samhita giggled and then clapped her hands over her mouth. Yes, I was quite beside myself, so I couldn't give you the exact details. But my father felt terrible and he wanted to make amends, so he went looking for another head. Thank goodness he didn't find a squirrel or something tiny. That would have looked silly. He found an elephant, and the next thing I knew, I was part pachyderm." Ganesha looked at the stunned faces in front of him with great satisfaction. "That's how I got a head. Now, who's next?" There was a long pause. The torchbearers avoided Ganesha's keen eyes as well as each other's. Ganesha chuckled. "Don't share all at once now." Samhita spoke hesitantly. "I don't mean to be insensitive, but I'm sure you've noticed that we haven't lost our heads like you. I mean, these are the heads we were born with." She seemed to be speaking in what she thought was a placating manner, but Brahm mumbled to her out of the corner of his mouth, "Did you just tell a god that he lost his head? Maybe work on your word choice next time?" Ganesha's ears were made to pick up mumbling, though, and he laughed a belly laugh. "Ha! Don't worry. It's not such a big insult, Brahm," he said. He smiled at Samhita to reassure her and show her that he wasn't offended. "You see, before I lost my head, I was just a boy who was trying not to get in trouble with his mother, but who ended getting in trouble with his father instead. You might call it a total bummer." The torchbearers nodded in understanding. "But then I got another head, that is, my elephant head, and my new head came with special gifts. I have a memory. It never lets me forget. I have tiny eyes, so I observe every little detail, and with my big ears, not much gets said that I don't hear. I hold everyone's secrets in my big belly, along with the occasional modak laddu, of course. I am worshipped first among the gods because of my leadership qualities, and I wouldn't have gotten those without losing my original head and getting a new one. When you walk the path of a torchbearer, you have to replace your old way of thinking with a new way of thinking. You have to lose your head and get a new one. When you get a new head, it's like you have new eyes, new ears, a new brain. You see and hear things differently. You think differently. Am I making sense here? And it goes on from there. But that is a little conversation that Ganesha has with the three torchbearers. I hope you'll check out the book. See you soon. Happy Ganesh Chaturthi.